at any moment, things could change. Life is very fragile, and that's
That
something
could be.
I tell people. So that's what I saw in the painting, and Bob said, death is stealing the baby while the mother sleeps. I'm like, oh, boy.
I tend to be a little bit more literal.
You think?
Welcome to the Knife Wife podcast. I'm Suz, married to Bob Terzuola. This podcast is about couples who live, love, and work together. And has little to do with knives.
Hey, everybody, it's Bob and Suz here for the Knife Wife podcast and recording from Italy.
Drinking lots of espresso coffee.
Oh, boy, are we. It's a religion here, right, Bob?
And lovely little pastries and cookies, and looking forward to a big cannoli with dinner tonight.
Well, after dinner. Bob has become the king of the hotel, and we went for a little dessert in the bar last night, and he, because we went on a Cicchetti tour, but that's another story, that's another episode, but he wanted a cannoli, and they didn't have cannoli. They have whatever the chef makes that day, that's what they had, and I had homemade sorbet that I think was the best sorbet I've ever had. So he said to our restaurant, our waiter, Alessandro. There's a lot of Alessandros in our life. We've met a lot lately. Anyway, common name here too. He said to him, well, where's the cannoli? When I come tomorrow, I want a cannoli. And of course, the guy goes back to the chef and says, you know, these people here are falling all over themselves. And says, you know, so he comes back and he said, well, I would like you to know that I've spoken to the chef.
And tomorrow night, we'll have a cannoli for you. Is that great? Okay, wonderful.
All right. So anyway.
Leave the gun.
Leave the gun.
Leave the gun. Take the cannolis. That's the great line from The Godfather.
Right. So we flew through Munich on our way to Italy. And when we got to Munich, it was quite an adventure. First of all, if you need a wheelchair, which now I'm going to need one. I needed one today, although they were very nice about it. But Europe is not a place for people with physical handicaps. I'll tell you right now, it's just not. They're just not on it. You know, at the American airports, when Bob gets a wheelchair in the airport, they're waiting for you at the gate most of the time. But here, no. So what they did was they took us down the gateway. Everyone deboarded the plane. They sat us in a 3-seat bench with a big handicap sign over it and said, stay here, someone will come for you. And it was very hot, and I don't know how hot was it.
It was like a greenhouse. It was a big glassed-in area with closed doors, which were also glass, and tremendous windows, and the sun was shining in. So it was like a greenhouse, actually.
Well, it was, but it was outside. It was like 85 or 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And when they put us in this place, they shut and locked all the doors and turned off all the air conditioning, if there was.
The escalator.
And the escalator.
Turned off the escalator.
And so we were there with another woman who happened to live in Oceanside, California, but she was originally from Germany, and she was complaining about the Germans. Anyway.
And she was German.
She was German, I know. And so after about 15 minutes, we began to perspire heavily, and I said, well, I'm able. At that time I said, I'm going to go look for an open door and go find somebody. So I walked down this glass hall to another hallway. I turned a corner that was all glass, floor to ceiling, no air conditioning. I'm telling you, it was 95 if it was a degree in there. And I tried every door. There was an escalator and an elevator. The elevator was locked. It didn't work. The escalator had stopped. So I thought, well, I'm going to climb the steps of the escalator and go up there. And I saw more doors. I thought, well, I'm just going to find a door that's open. I did not. When I walked down the escalator, Bob and this woman were standing at the glass windows that faced into the gates where people waited, and they were trying to nicely get the attention. But then Bob popped his cork, man. He really...
Well, I was never known for my patience, you remember.
Yes, I know.
You may remember that.
Yes, I'm the patient one. Ha. And so he took his walking stick and he started to beat the glass. And when I say he beat the glass, it reverberated in my ears. It was so loud, and the woman that was with us was startled at first, but she was all about him beating this glass. And so people would walk by and he'd be beating on the glass, and they'd look at us and then just keep walking. Did that infuriate you more?
Yes.
It
As
did.
a matter of fact, so I beat the glass even harder.
Yes, you kept beating the glass and beating the glass. And wouldn't you know, 45 minutes of beating the glass did nothing. It did nothing. But the man who was coming with the wheelchair happened to show up then. And so he came, he opened the door, and, Bob and this woman jumped all over him. And I said to him, I know it's not your fault. And he said, I'm sorry, we don't have enough people working. He said, we said, well, where is the other woman's wheelchair? And Bob was being very polite, and he said to, take this woman first, we'll wait. The door was open. I thought, we'll go on the inside where it's cool and
cooler,
wait.
yeah.
And he said, no, I can take you because, this is Germany and there are rules and regulations to be followed. So he called his colleague and someone came for her in 5 minutes. When Bob was saying, no, you stay, you go and I'll stay, I think she kind of wanted him to go because he was so agitated. She was like, oh, no, it's okay.
Yeah, you get out of here. Yeah.
So anyway.
But we'll give you an idea of how rigid this whole thing was. When we first got off the airplane, there was a woman standing there with a wheelchair.
Yes, and
one
I
of
said,
the wheelchair pushers, right? And
Right.
she's standing there, and I just assumed it was either for me or for this other lady who was also mobility impaired. We said, I'm Terzuola, and there's this lady here. Can we get in the wheelchair and give? Oh no, are you going to Toulouse?
yeah, she kept saying to me, are you
Toulouse?
going to Toulouse? And I
Toulouse
was like,
where? France? We're in Germany. This is Munich, Germany. She said, no, are you
connecting.
getting on the plane to Toulouse? Well, we said, no. Well, she said, well, I can't take you. And away she went.
Yeah,
and
she
she left,
walked- yeah.
locked the doors behind her, and there we were.
There we were. So
So-
anyway, so the guy was very nice, but if you've not traveled in European airports, I don't know why, it's 2024, they're still using buses to take you from gate to gate. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but I don't know why it's still that way. They could change that. So we had to go down in an elevator, and then we had to go in a minivan, and then we had to drive around the outside of the airport to the correct gate, and he brought us to our correct gate, and we weren't boarding yet. And the woman who was working the gate was very nice, and she said, we told her, that we had been waiting. We just made our flight. We had 2 hours in between, and with all this, we just made our flight driving around the airport. And so the woman who was at the gate was very kind, and she said, if no one comes back, she said, I used to have a job doing this. She said, I'll push you down the gateway. Don't worry about it. You won't be stuck here. I said, well, I can push him.
Yeah.
And so, however, this was Germany. This was Lufthansa. And so when the time came, we had designated seats, and all we were going to on the gateway was to a bus. We still had to go to the plane on the next bus. And so finally everyone had gone, and this woman, there was no one to push us from the wheelchair pushing department. So this woman started to push us, and someone she worked with stopped her and said, you can't take him down there. You can't push him. And she said, yes, I can. And she bucked the system, and she took him, which was very nice. But anyway, and then we got on a little plane and a little puddle jumper and went to Milan, and we were very happy to be here and got an Uber. And the Uber, when we got out of the airport, I thought the Ubers were to the right, and we couldn't see the gate numbers we were at. And so we could see a number 4 across a few lanes of traffic, and Bob thought, well, that's where we're going. And I thought, we go there to the right, as I remember where Ubers were. But anyway, so I went across, and the Uber driver kept calling me, Madame, where are you? I said, I'm at number 4. He said, no, you're not. I'm at number 4. So after many phone calls and not a lot of English and not a lot of Italian on my part to describe airport terminals and whatever, we finally figured out which floor I was at and which floor he was at, and he met us, and we were on our way to the hotel. We get to the hotel, which is this very schmancy Marriott. We stayed there one night before Beller got us in. What Beller didn't know is that if he used his rate, it's a long story, and I probably can't say for his protection, that he had to be there. So we go to check in, and we have this woman who was right out of Mussolini's.
Very rigid.
Very rigid. Said, "Well, Mr. Beller must be here." I said, "Well, he's not here right now, but he will. He's coming." She said, "Nope, I can't check you in. It's going to be the regular rate," which was astronomical. So we call Beller. Beller talks to her. He says, "Oh, geez." He said, "I'll call the ambassador desk. Just check in and pay the price, and I'll do my best to get most of your money back." But anyway, I don't know if he did or not. I haven't checked with them. But anyway, so then I thought, oh, we have to go to another hotel. But then I remembered we used to stay in a Marriott in the other side of Milan, but a very nice neighborhood. The Marriott was kind of older, but, we knew the neighborhood. And so I texted Beller and said, "What about this Marriott?" And he said, "Okay, if you want to go there, it's not the fanciest one, but okay." So we went back.
It's a very old one.
It's very old. It's on Via Washington, but it was it was under construction when we got there, but we didn't hear any noise or anything while we were staying there. But as I remembered, the people who worked there were always, don't you think, very nice?
Very nice.
Very
yeah.
nice. So
and we had gone there many times for the knife shows. This was the hotel where they had the knife show in the ballroom, and we stayed there, and we got to know some of the people who actually worked there.
Right. And so the first day we were in Milan, what was weird, though, was to be in that hotel and have no knife show.
Yeah, it was very strange.
It's really weird. I
yeah.
kept thinking when I got up in the morning, oh, I have to go to the show, but there was no show. So anyway, so the first day we went to the Da Vinci Natural or History and Technology.
The Science and Technology Museum.
Right. And so we were sitting on a bench there, and this guy comes up to us, and he says, "Are you Bob Terzuola?" Bob looked up and he goes, "Yeah."
Yeah, like I didn't
Am I in
recognize
trouble?
this guy at all. Am I in trouble?
Right. It ends up, I guess he's a knife maker, and he knew who Bob was. And he said he saw him at Blade Show, but we didn't remember this guy. Anyway, so I said, well, that's a first being recognized in another country by someone.
By somebody from Finland.
Yeah, he was from Finland on top of it.
Amazingly enough.
But I knew I liked him because his wife had on a Mary Mecco shirt. So there we go. She had a Mary Mecco print T-shirt on. So that was kind of fun. It was rainy, very rainy the first day. And so we walked a lot with that. And by the end of that museum tour, my knee absolutely just gave out. And it's given out ever since. So
Yeah.
I have been, the nice thing about this hotel is every time I walked in the door, they would go behind the bar and hand me a bag of ice for my knee. And I've iced it, it should be not swollen, but it's, Susie's getting a new knee soon. But anyway, so that's kind of put a damper in things. And usually I'm the one pushing Bob or helping Bob, but he's been helping me a great deal because I just can't do it.
And she used enough ice to rebuild the glacier in Greenland.
I've iced that knee, and I bought Hazel at the pharmacy. I bought a cane, which helps a little. I lean on that a little when I step on that leg, but the leg just doesn't. The knee just doesn't work anymore. It locks and doesn't unlock, and anyway, you don't need to hear about that. So anyway, so we had a fun time there, and then the next day I had seen all these different art shows. They were closed the day we got there. They weren't open till the next day.
It was Monday.
And then one of them wasn't open till later in the week. So the first show we went to was a Shepherd Ferry show. But the night before we went, I always liked to, when I was teaching in Florence, there was only 2 TV stations back then, but I loved to turn on the TV, and they had these game shows on with these funny game show hosts and these beautiful girls, and it was easy to understand. It was simple Italian. So, I learned a lot of Italian by watching these game shows. So I thought, I'm going to see if there's any game shows on. Well, I got to some channel. It was, I think it's public television there. And there was a guy on, and, and Bob was in the bathroom. And there was a guy, and he had a pink marionette bird puppet. And in the backdrop of this was like a hotel lobby with a bell desk, and there was a guy who was playing the bellman behind him. So this guy was sort of making this pink marionette puppet walk on the floor next to him, and a policeman comes in the scene, and he takes out a taser and he tasers this puppet, and the puppet drops to the ground. Well, I think that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I hope I'm describing it that way. Anyway, and then the policeman takes the puppet, scoops it up, and puts it under his arm and walks off the set. And so I am trying to figure out who is this guy, and this guy is a comedian and a magician. His name is Mago Forrest, and the show is Motel Forest that he was in. And so then he proceeded to do like magic tricks. He had all these trunks and cases and stuff he'd open and take this wild stuff out. But this is one of those guys that had a face. His face is funny. He doesn't even have to say anything. All you have to do is look at his face and you laugh.
Mago in Italian is magician.
Yes.
So he was actually named Mago Forrest, the magician Forrest.
Right.
And he was a pretty good magician, actually.
So, I watched the entire show. It was one of my favorite things I've ever watched in my life. I couldn't understand probably 9/10 of it, but you don't really have to understand sort of slapstick humor and magic. And he was terribly funny. And the bellman, there was a bell. And every now and then, Mago would just start ringing a bell, and he had other bells attached to his costume. So he'd touch himself in places, and the bells would ring. It was the grandest thing I've ever seen, and the funniest thing. Anyway, I texted our friends, and I took a screenshot of the TV and said, "Do you know who Mago, this Motel Forest, is?" Oh, they couldn't believe that I like this because he's so corny. He's
very corny.
He's sort of a mix of a Red Skelton meets not David Blaine, meets some old time magician. And if you don't know who Red Skelton is, he was a comedian who had a variety show years ago. And Mr. Bean, the whole thing all together. He was just. I got to tell you, that was one of the most fun, and I love comedy, but it was such a funny show. And I looked him up he's on YouTube, but everything's in Italian. And somehow I'm going to figure out when I get home how to put subtitles and see if there are subtitles for that.
And he was funny enough to have her screeching, which I heard from the other room, and wondering what the hell happened to Susie. Did she
thought
fall?
It was my knee. You thought it was my knee. I said, "No, it's Mago." He goes, "What the hell's Mago?"
Mago, what the hell is Mago? And I came out and looked at him, and sure enough, he was pretty funny and a good magician, actually.
Yeah, pretty good magician. And I have a shirt from the Cubs, one of the shortstops, Javier Baez. They called him El Mago because he was the magician when it came to catching blind drives and unbelievable plays. And so I have a shirt that says El Mago. And
Mago for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, which I will always think of this Italian guy. Never, because Javier Baez left the Cubs, like so did so many of the others. But anyway. So that was my night of laughter, and that made me so happy. And so the next day we went off to see Shepard Fairey, and I said to Bob, "Are you sure you want to see Shepard Fairey?" Because Shepard Fairey in San Diego, up one of the buildings in Little Italy, has his Andre the Giant Obey mural up there. And I've been a big fan of Shepard Fairey's for a lot of reasons. One, he's started out as a printmaker. He's a silkscreen guy. And when he started doing his tagging and whatever, he did it on labels and just stuck them on things, and then did a lot of paper and pasting, which was not destroying a building like spray paint does. So I like that. And I heard him very early on because I kept wondering, why Andre the Giant? Why did he relate to Andre the Giant so much? Well, he said that Andre the Giant felt like such an outsider, that he didn't literally fit in anywhere. Look up Andre the Giant if you don't know who he is. And so that sort of became Shepard Fairey's stage name, or his symbol, the person he identified with. And for 10 years, he even said this, I hid behind Andre the Giant. And I really related to that because growing up or in high school or college, wherever, I never quite fit in any group. I think Bob doesn't fit in any group either.
Let's back up just a little bit. We had gone to an art fair exposition in Miami several years ago.
No, he has a museum in Miami at the Walls.
Museum,
at the Walls.
And Susan introduced me to Shepard Fairey and
literally,
and she actually met him there.
I met him, and he
talked to
sent me a whole stack of postcards and a whole bunch of stickers and stuff.
I was, kind of overwhelmed in his little museum there and Susie bought this book called Obey. And something I have never done very well in my life is obey what other people tell me to do. So I was kind of chagrined and a little bit turned off by this guy's, and I wasn't sure just what his political or social or cultural bent was.
Well, you thought he meant that we should obey everything, but he meant the opposite. He meant that we should not obey.
Yeah, well,
However,
he should have said, don't obey, if that's what he meant.
Anyway,
so then we saw him
nuances.
in Milan, not him personally.
So anyway, this show in Milan, when we got off the airplane, we were driving to the airport, I saw a bunch of posters, how they glue posters all over the place when there's an art show or an opera or something. And I saw the Andre the Giant, because I have Andre the Giant, he's in my studio. And so I looked up, and sure enough, there was the largest Shepard Fairey show ever in Europe. So I was like, okay, I'm down. But I really didn't think, Bob, and I'm happy and I'm not happy you went with me. When we walked in, there was a saying on the wall, and it's saying the show, saying that everyone is equal and everyone should be recognized, and that he is all for that, and I took a picture of Bob next to that because Bob very much his days in Central America, I mean, he spent a lot of time helping the underdeveloped people of the world and treated them with love and kindness and respect, and not like they were these poor souls. I mean, he loves the Guatemalans and Panamanians, and in Puerto Rico, I mean, you were all over.
That's right. Yes.
So I thought, okay, and we turned the corner, and Shepard Fairey's poster of Barack Obama with hope is there. I have another picture of Bob, and Bob's like chagrined, saying, how could you go from one thing, and now here you are with Barack Obama, who is, everyone knows, Bob is a conservative. But, I read both of Barack's books, and until he had already been our president, for the first term.
What kind of person writes 2 autobiographies before they're 35?
Barack Obama.
Yeah, Barack Obama.
Picasso. Yeah. People, that want to be heard and seen. I mean, that's a way to get on the circuit, just to write a book. So the point is, I was and people are going to turn me off, but after his first term, I was no longer a fan of his. And I won't even go into that. But anyway, so we were walking around the show, and Bob was seeing things like he saw a white policeman poster that says, I'm going to beat you up, and
I'm going to get away with it.
Right, he saw that, and then he saw Uncle Sam. Was it Uncle Sam?
Yeah, and then it was something like, I'm going to blow you up, or I'm going to destroy the world, or I'm basically an evil person, something like that.
Right. So it's something that I have a completely different perspective of than Bob does. And I'm not saying I'm right and he's wrong, or he's right and I'm wrong. I mean, everyone's allowed to have their thoughts. And I guess that's what's happening in our culture, that we're not allowed to have our thoughts. We're not allowed to express ourselves, that we've been shut down.
Well, he sure did. And made a fortune.
Well, and that's the other thing. Shepard Fairey's made a lot of money by taking the stances he's made, and he's had a lot of fame because of that. And I guess he could be a skateboarder, who done good. But
Been a very successful communist.
well, I don't know if he's a communist. I think he's a capitalist because he's making a ton of money, and I don't know if he gives away any of his money. I have no idea. I don't really know that much about him. All I know is that graphically, he's brilliant.
I would agree with that. He did some beautiful, beautiful portraits of people, just some famous people and some probably not so famous people, but an awful lot of them.
Yeah, and I could have stayed there probably all day because he's such a graphic wonder and he layers things graphically that I could have looked at his images forever. There were so many I'd never seen except in a magazine or a newspaper or something that were all there. And I love his work, and I don't care what he.
Yeah, there were a lot of them there. He was a very busy propagandist, is what he was.
Well, and the one thing when he did the Hope poster, I immediately looked up Chairman Mao's posters because it was so similar to those, and so similar. He took sort of Andy Warhol and Chairman Mao, whoever did the Chairman Mao propaganda posters, and he sort of married them and made the Barack Obama one. And whether I like Barack, what he did or not, I mean, I still think he's fascinating. I would love to have dinner with Barack and Michelle Obama. I would love to have a dinner with them. Bob's looking at me like, are you kidding me? No, I would. And I would love to have dinner with Trump. Sorry, honey. Both of them.
The difference is, Trump would pay for the dinner.
I don't know that. I have no idea. So we're in the show, and every time something came up, both Bob and I, we sort of knocked heads because we don't see things the same way in this. And, I come from a long line of my great-grandmother was arrested for a women's right to vote, and I come from a long, long line of strong-willed, independent women. And so I understand, or I feel the way I believe what Shepard Fairey is saying is that as a woman, I feel underserved. I don't think that's the truth anymore. But when I was growing up, what people have to understand as people my age is the first 20 years of my life, I was told to get an MRS degree, to marry well. And as Bob and I laughed, my mother told me to marry, marry, marry. I got really good at getting married, didn't I?
Yeah, she married me for my money, obviously.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, a doctor, a lawyer, what can I tell you? And then it changed. Then the women's movement happened. And then we were supposed to be able to do everything.
And things fell apart from there on.
Well, I don't know if they fell apart, but things didn't get any easier for women. And so when I meet a woman who's a mother and is holding a corporate job, and she says to me, I'm so tired, I'm so exhausted, and, I feel like I'm behind. If I'm with my child, I'm thinking about work, and if I'm at work, I'm thinking about I should be with my child, and I say to her, you know what? I felt the same way many years ago. And this whole thing that we can do it all is kind of a lie, because nobody can do it all. And I'm not saying that mothers should stay home and men should go to work. I just think there needs to be one parent there, and people are going to get so upset. And I know people can't afford to have one parent there anymore. I mean, that's just the way it is. You got to work. Everybody's got to work. Or else maybe we don't have, a Lexus and 3 other cars and whatever, and someone stays home. But that's a whole other story. So anyway, so we're in this exhibit, and Bob took there was Frida Kahlo. There was a beautiful Iranian woman. There are several.
There was some beautiful painting of, I guess, prints you would call them.
They were prints. They were
beautifully done.
Layered silk screens. Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it. The talent there was obvious.
Yes. However, the message Bob was not. He was not going with me about the underserved or whatever. So, anyway. So we left there. I really didn't want to leave, but, I thought, if this is nails on the chalkboard for this guy, how long can he listen to that? So
we did see his movie. There was a movie about him.
Yes, and he talked about the power of an image. And we all know the power of images of commercials we've seen or whatever. And he said that through Andre the Giant and his obey image, he realized how powerful that could be, because in other propaganda worldwide, just how people were influenced by this image, seeing it over and over again, which is why he kept putting obey with Andre the Giant's face out. So when it came time to make a poster for his candidate, he had fine-tuned it all. And nobody will forget that. Now he's got the Kamala Harris one out, and even though maybe that's not going to be where I'm going, graphically I love it. Graphically it's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's pretty good propaganda.
Yeah. So also that day we went to see another exhibit of a Italian painter who's probably your age now, Bob. I don't know if he's still alive. His name is Valerio Adami, and his is also kind of graphic looking, but it's paintings. And
very big. There were a lot of really big paintings there.
They're very big, very colorful, color blocks, all lined in dark, like a marker had been drawn around them. However, he was at the time where Cubism came into play, and modern art and abstract art, and so every image was a mixture of those, and I absolutely loved all the images that I saw.
That's a very generous way of putting it.
Yes, and then Bob walks by one, and there is the Grim Reaper. Was it the Grim Reaper?
It was a skeleton walking with a child, like leading a child
out a door
by the hand
out
of the doorway of a house, obviously a house, and the child is looking back, has a little, I guess a little doll in her hand, and looking back at the mother, and the mother is curled up on a couch sleeping. So death, to my mind, death was stealing the baby while mommy slept.
And I thought that death starts coming for us from the time we are very small, and we sort of sleep through thinking death isn't really coming for me, and we miss the fact of how precious life is. And as we know from our children and our lives, at any moment things could change. Life is very fragile, and that's something I tell people. So that's what I saw in the painting, and Bob said, death is stealing the baby while the mother sleeps. I'm like, oh boy.
I tend to be a little bit more literal.
You think?
Some of his enormous paintings, and I mean enormous, they were pretty big. To me, they looked like garbage dumps.
And they weren't, because they were many planes, and he used many colors in which to...
I know, and many things like toilet seats and automobile parts and tools and all kind of jumbled and thrown together into big mishmashes.
They weren't mishmashes. They were very complex. They were so complex, and I was a little disappointed at my love here that he couldn't get his head wrapped around that. They were so complex, and they were so poignant, and they were brilliant. He took so many ideas and put them into one thing, and he was able to change the planes and the colors to shift from one thing to another visually. But Bob, he wasn't buying any of it.
I'm very literal. I don't have that kind of... I don't have that kind of release from reality.
Which I have a lot of. Ever since I put reality on the back burner, my life has been jam-packed and fun-filled.
Jam-packed and fun-filled, yeah. Okay,
anyway.
I guess so. Anyway, it was not, I'm not a lover of modern, I hate even to use the word art. I don't consider it art. I consider it the emperor's new clothes.
Well, this was an entire retrospective of this man's art for 45 years. And I love retrospectives. It was phenomenal, as was Shepard Fairey's. And
Shepard Fairey, I thought, was a great artist. Because he represented people as they were. He made really nice portraits and faces that looked like people. They actually looked like people.
These look like people.
Yeah. This other Italian guy, there was nothing recognizable, generally speaking, in most of them.
And forgive my husband, Mr. Adami. Please forgive him
Yes.
because, you are truly great. Anyway, 2 shows in
Buy
one
a
day.
book on drawing.
No, he can draw very well. They had a couple of his early paintings, which were beautiful, very representational. So anyway, so that was those 2 days, those 2 shows in that day, and we really had just a wonderful time.
We did, actually.
We
yes.
did, in spite of Bob not liking.
In spite of my
all the art.
obtuseness, if you listen to Susan over here.
Mr. Literal. Yes, how can I help you? So
Literal.
he loves Turner paintings. He loves boats sinking in the harbor.
Oh,
That's
they're
the
not
kind
sinking in the
yes,
harbor.
they are.
They are not. The Fighting Temeraire is not sinking.
What's
it's
it
being
doing?
towed to its destruction.
Oh, I see. It's being towed. There we go. It's so much happier than a child being taken
Well,
by
I like
death.
I really like Edward Hopper. You know?
He's so happy too. There's a man who's full, Mr. Laughs. Oh my God, he's all alone. Everyone's alone. Everyone's
Norman Rockwell. I love Norman Rockwell.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, very, very literal.
Yeah,
Very
but-
literal. He
but-
was an illustrator.
Yeah, but not Jackson Pollock, who basically got to be famous because of his drop cloths.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
There's something for everyone. So we're not going to start an art review show. I'll tell you that. Although it could be a funny show because what Bob sees.
Then we
what I
went
see.
to another show on Thursday.
We did, but first we went to dinner with the Ruffiani.
Oh, the Ruffiani. That's right.
We
Yeah.
went to dinner with the Ruffiani, and the Ruffiani are collectors of Bob's for many, many years. He calls them that.
Because when I was young, when I was a little kid, my grandfather used to call me Ruffian. Hey, Ruffian, come over here.
What does that mean?
Ruffian it's in English it would be like a ruffian, but it's a street kid. It's an urchin, a street urchin, the kind of that Dickens would have written about type
Right.
of thing.
And from
you know.
seeing your pictures when you were little, I could see why he would call you that. And if he saw you today, he'd probably with stains all over your clothes
Right.
and your shirt untucked and
So
whatever.
when I started selling knives in Italy, when I come over to the Italian show, I guess it was, I don't know, mid-90s or something, there was this group of about 5 guys that would hang out together, and they would come over and we'd chat and we'd talk, and they, almost all of them would always pretty much buy a knife from me. And this went on for a couple of years. I got this long before I knew Susan.
And 2 of them got to know each other. This is a great story. Steve and Fausto got to know each other. They took a knife making class many years ago, and they didn't know each other. They met in the class, and they hit it off so much that if you know Steve and Fausto, one is funnier than the other. And I'm glad I didn't sit next to them in school because we would have all been in the principal's office. Anyway, they talk so much and they laugh so much and were so disruptive that one of the guys that was in the class said, if these 2 are going to be in the next class, I'm not signing up. I don't want to be part of it. Anyway, so these other Ruffiani, one's a teacher, one's a banker, the other one does...
From Switzerland?
Yeah, from computers.
He does computer now. He's a security manager at a bank and so forth. But anyway, there were 5 of them, and I gave them the name Ruffiani, which just broke them up completely. They thought that was...
Because they're anything but.
They loved it, because they're all
They're
pretty
anything but.
high-class people.
So anyway, so we've had many meals with them. We try to always get together with them once while we're in Milan, and so we were with 4 out of 5, and our son Alex got to meet them and Jen, and we went to a really fun restaurant. I don't think it was the best food I ever ate, but it was a beautiful restaurant. The best food I ever ate. We had nothing but good food since we got here. So anyway, we had dinner with them, and then the next day we went to a show that wasn't open until Thursday, and it was miniatures called Life is Small. And 2 of the people that were in the show, which I didn't know before we went, were in the show. One was a person from the Ukraine or Croatia or Russia, I'm not sure where exactly he's from, and he carves miniature sculptures on the point of a pencil.
Lead point of a pencil.
Right. He does it with a X-Acto knife. Those are his tools. That's what he uses. And I had seen them. I follow him on Instagram, and then there was another person who takes shadows from objects, and I think the person is a cartoonist by trade, and makes very unusual, funny drawings. Like he had a comb, and the comb was tilted so that the shadow of the object makes part of the image, and it was the shadow of the comb was got some guy's hair, and then he draws the face around it with marker.
He was like a farmer, standing up. He was a farmer, kind of. If you can imagine, if you can remember Grant Wood's farmer and his wife, and the guy he would do a cartoon on paper, and then he would put a comb with a very strong light and move the comb, and the tines of the comb would turn out to be the tines of the pitchfork as well as his hair on the drawing on the paper. And it was very, very creative.
Right. And then they had anyway, there were many people. There were people who did actual tiny miniature people that were no more than an inch tall. And the perspective of the photography was taken from down on the floor where the person was, so that everything looked giant like a city, and it was really just someone's desk.
They had one that was really impressive, a pile of white raisins made from white grapes on one side, and in the middle were these little tiny individual little people, and one guy had like a bicycle pump, a big two-handed bicycle pump, with a tube going into one of the raisins.
And then on the other side...
And on the other side, they were full green grapes. It was like he was blowing
grapes
up...
and raisins, and they were in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I asked many people, Bob, after I took a picture of this on my phone. You said it looked like they were making raisins.
Grapes out of raisins.
Oh, so they were blowing them up.
He was blowing them up with the bicycle pump.
Okay, but I thought it was the opposite. No surprise, everybody. I thought it was the opposite. I thought they were making raisins from grapes. So I showed it to Reggie, I showed it to JoJo, I showed it to everyone, and it was about 50-50. One person said they were making grapes, one other person said they were making raisins. So, anyway, very clever.
Very clever.
And then one of the exhibits, you even got a magnifying glass to look at.
You needed a magnifying glass. They had these magnifying glasses. You just picked them out of a holder, and you could go around to the exhibit and look in the. I guess they were in glass boxes or something. And there were miniature paintings and just absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, one woman made tiny miniature paintings, which I really related to because as a child I made paintings for my dollhouse every day. And she had a miniature Frida Kahlo. She did a few parodies, a miniature Yayoi Kusama. And her paintings were amazing. Anyway, these were all miniature art, but incredible miniature art, not just any miniature art.
And then along one wall they had a shadow do-it-yourself type of
they had a
thing on
kids
the desk.
station, which Katie, if you're listening, this is what the kid. They always have a kids thing, and I always go and do the kids thing.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it. They had the little strong lights. It was kind of dark in the room. They had these really strong little spotlights on the desk, and pads of paper
and objects,
pencils, and all sorts of objects
that made good shadows. So you picked the basket. It was like a pencil cup holder, but it was a wire basket.
It was a wire basket, and I had the light shining through it, and onto the paper it shone like a bird cage. It just looked like a bird cage. So on that piece of paper, I drew a bar with a bird.
You did. And then I did a couple of them. I did two of them. I did a
did.
kid on a swing. It was with a hook and something else. Anyway, it was great fun sitting down and doing this. I said, "Come on, Bob, let's do this." He goes, "Can we?" Meaning,
I wasn't sure you were allowed to do it.
Right. Well, we're adults, but I'm not an adult, so
It was a hands-on experience, and it was really nice. I enjoyed it.
I got a nice book, and our friend who's a miniature sculpturist, Daniel Kronberg. I got a book which I will send to him of the exhibit because he and I share different. He sends me miniature things, and we have several of his miniature bronzes. And I was kind of sorry that they didn't know about his work because he would have brought a new level to that show.
Certainly, yeah.
He would have.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was that. And then the next day, the van picked us up, and away we went to Maniago.
Church van.
Yeah, the church van. So anyway, so that was our time in Milan.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a wonderful time. We're going back there in a few days, and we're going to fly out from there. And we're going to record another, we're going to give you a little Venice podcast. Unfortunately, I can't go live anywhere. I tried to go live on Instagram and Facebook, but there's not enough reception to go live in these places. So, the best laid plans of mice and men. And to those who were looking for deep dives from the Knife Factory, by the time we got there, I had no knee. I could not walk around the festival. I could not walk around the factory very much. I took a couple videos, and I'll clip them together when we get home and make one deep dive out of them. But there's really not a lot of footage that I had hoped to get because I can't. I'm hobbling around. I am literally hobbling around. So anyway, so that's it.
Or being wheeled.
Or I was wheeled. Yeah, usually I push Bob. Today he pushed me in the wheelchair.
When did you ever push me in a wheelchair?
In the airports.
Oh, in
when
an
they were to
airport.
show.
That's right.
Yeah.
We did that once.
Yeah, in the Art Institute of Chicago, I pushed you in a
That's
wheelchair.
true. In the art museum, she pushed me around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did.
She always pushes me around. I know.
That's me. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks. I hope we gave you a little travel log. I'm no Rick Steves, but or somebody.
And now we say goodbye to the wonderful land here in Italy.
Okay, Milano. Ciao, Milano.
Anybody who's ever seen a 1950s travelogue will know exactly what that means.
Yeah,
we
well,
say
probably-
goodbye to our lovely time here.
Right, but very few people will be that old, Bob.
I know. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
Adios.
Not adios.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. What language? Bob keeps speaking
Auf Wiedersehen.
Spanish with a little bit of Italian in it. And you see people look at him when he's saying something and it's half Spanish, half Italian, and they cock their head to the side. And I know at that point, what is the word for it? Italianish, Italish, battalion, I don't know what it
Mishmash.
is. Anyway, but
But I get my point across.
buonasera.
Buonasera.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please share this with a friend and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Please support our efforts through Patreon at TheKnifeWife, and for all Terzuola goodness, go to terzuola.net. And remember, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Comments and questions can be made on Instagram at the TheKnifeWife Podcast or our Facebook group, The TheKnifeWife Podcast. And if you're a couple who work together and would like to be on our podcast, tell us about yourself with an email at eccentricsuz.com or terzuola.net.